All right. Well, hello everyone to another QSL podcast. This is season 3, episode 2. And we got some fun stuff for you today. Nearly every single team, week 1, was able to schedule their game. Only one team rescheduled, which is the Kings Dukes versus the Arkan Dragons. But otherwise, we got a lot of results we want to go over today. And then we will preview and give our predictions for week 2. So, with that in mind, let's get right into it. I mean, we've been talking about the patch on stream a lot, so I think we can probably overlook talking about just in general how much Smite has changed because we're going to see how the meta evolves as week 2 goes on.
You mean how
So only
everything has been a giant cluster and nobody knows what the heck they're doing anymore?
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And one team managed to play it, and we will get into that in a moment on this patch. So without further ado, let's get right into the meat of today's podcast. So, recapping week 1, the first result that we will talk about here is Boonie Gang versus the Reapers. Reapers take that set 2-1. So, Red, if you would like to give your thoughts to begin with.
Yeah, so I knew this was going to be a really tough game back and forth. I knew it was going to be on the edge. Um I think the only person that didn't put it, the only person that didn't put it 2-1 in their predictions was Cooter. And even then I was so torn whether or not it was going to be Reapers or Booney. And I don't know what pushed me towards Booney. I can't even remember at that time because it's been a week. But just thinking about that game, it was so close. Every single game was so close. Um, I'm trying to remember exactly how the last game came down to a team fight that just worked so well for Reapers, and they were able to end off of it. Um, but I mean, just looking at that, how the rosters were stacked up, how everything was played out, it was almost like you could have done a coin flip, and that's essentially what Game 3 was a coin flip. You had Booney Gang dominating Game 1, you had Reapers dominating Game 2, and then like Game 3, they're like, okay, we figured everything out, coin flip.
Yeah, it's that result kind of surprises me a lot. I mean, you have in that game the number 1 overall sub killer. Um and I can't speak to the actual like details of this game at the moment because, like you said, it's been a while. But you know, it's somewhat surprising the performance of some of these players in that game. Well, let's set in particular. It was very surprising to me that it was that close, such that, as you said, it could have been a coin flip at that point. Um, you know, but I also took it to one Booney Gang. You know, I believe that Subkiller, if he's in his headspace, he can run games down for the most part against most individuals that are playing in solo. Solo is one of those stacked roles. Yes, of course, I understand, but you know, he can be that good. So that's sort of what my mindset was, and Reapers taking the set win is pretty big for them, as they will be facing a very large opponent next. So
Yeah, honestly, not even gonna lie to you, I didn't expect that. I know I didn't do my predictions last week. I've been kind of slacking because work's been, a little bit hectic
it's
lately.
quarantine.
But if I had to fully, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not one to be like, oh, I would have predicted that. Like, no, if I'm being totally honest, looking back at it, my prediction would have been Booney Gang probably 2-0, probably 2-1 maybe. But I mean, from what I can tell, I really haven't watched the game yet. I plan on going back to it, but I've just been so busy. But I'm gonna guess Inori did Inori things and Poyo showed out. So I really can't wait to watch that game. It sounds like a hell of a set, and I would have expected Booney to win that 2-0, in my opinion. But I think that Inori Poyo combo probably popped off.
I know from watching part of the game that Poyo, like one of the big questions, especially when I did my tier list, was is Poyo going to do what Poyo has done in the past? I know he's very, very good. He's up there in one of the best carries in the league when he's feeling himself. Like when he's in the groove, I think he could go toe to toe with anybody and probably beat anybody. But I didn't know what was going to happen because he'd been taking some time off from the game. I had talked to Poe, I had talked to a couple other people, and they said, yeah, he's kind of like he's getting back into it. So I'm like, okay, maybe, he's rusty for game one, maybe game two, that they might drop a couple and that'll kind of be the end of it. But apparently he came out swinging. So like game one was rust and then all the rust was gone and he just came out swinging after that.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like he's going to be a huge player to watch this entire season. I'm excited to see him. He's even called himself washed. And I don't know. I really think that, if he is washed, if that's washed Pollo, and he, like you said he came out swinging. I can't wait to see what he does later in the season. And also looking at the rosters, there's a change, but we'll talk about that when we're talking about the upcoming games for next week.
Yeah, yeah, that is when we will talk about those roster changes. Then we didn't really want to dedicate a section to it just because week one you're going to expect a lot of them being minors moves.
Well, I'm
you know,
talking about position changes.
well,
Just
yeah,
saying.
that as well, of course, but that's what I mean. Um, but yeah, so that's our thoughts on that. And the second one here, Phenoms versus Zeus Juice. Phenoms taking that set 2-0. I remember being on the cast for that game, and oh boy, was that. Un- Unfortunately for Zeus Juice, that was a game that was very much in control by Phenoms basically the entire time. I know a couple of us predicted that Phenoms were going to take a 1-0 lead and then immediately troll and make that game, or set rather, go to 3. I was the one person who said no, they're gonna just dial in and do it, and that's exactly what happened. There were pretty much no flaws with how they played. I know that you've talked to Skeet personally about like what their headspace was and whatnot, but whatever they did worked, honestly, and that's all that mattered. They played it on their terms the entire set.
Yeah, Red, you got anything to say on it?
I mean, that's really about it. I mean, when I said 2-1 on that one, I kind of looked at it and went, okay, maybe they're a little new, playing together, or maybe there's something. I know Brown wants to troll. I know Viz likes to troll. Maybe just they let the troll get out of the hand in like game two or something like that. There's just one game that they just kind of like, yeah, whatever, and then they just roll because that's what last season was, and they go, nope, we're going to come out swinging in game one and game two and just be done with this. We've all got things to do for some reason. And that was the end of it. It's like, okay, well, so much for that. And that's essentially what the game was. It was not as close as I think many of us kind of expected. I mean, Rye had shown good promise last season. Rapid Carnation, Olive is always a very good support. Um, but I mean, even Margiela in solo lane is not. If he's playing anybody else, it's not a problem. Like he can go toe to toe with people, but the problem is the Phenoms roster is stacked to the point where you're trying to go, where's the weakness? Um, the bench. I mean, that's about it. So it was kind of the expected, but it was even more overwhelming than even maybe I expected at that point.
I mean, you guys say it was kind of a stomp, and I think towards the end of the game it looked as such, but I mean, watching the games back, uh, I was definitely a little worried. You know, Viz got off to a slow start. I don't think he was in the right mindset, or I know he wasn't in the right headspace that game. Um, Personally, I love the way that Zeus Juice came out swinging. They really brought it early, and I just feel like that early aggression kind of died off. They didn't really keep the throttle down. I think that they had a chance at those games watching it. I feel like there was maybe a couple drop plays, a couple miscommunications, maybe from it being week one, but I feel like they were a really good competitor. I don't think it was as one sided as it may look on the stat sheet as the game finished out, but I mean, I think at one point in game one, it was, I mean, they had the kill lead and we were just up a little bit in gold and XP was the difference. And we kind of just carried that into fights. Um, or I
Yeah.
don't say we, I'm just an owner
Yeah,
now.
I mean,
So,
yeah, I know. I want to kind of revise what I was saying because I just remembered the specifics. So, yeah, game one was actually pretty even, but yeah, the stat sheet in the very end says a different story. Like, late game just became such a strong point for Phenoms. And then game two was an arena game. There were a billion kills. I think it was 4 minutes passed, nothing happened, and then 5 more minutes passed, and there were 15 kills that happened in that point in that period of time.
oh yeah,
Um,
it was a brawl. That's for
yeah,
sure.
that game two was simply an arena, and Zeus Juice I think will definitely learn from those mistakes there and think about when is there a good fight to take? When can we take the advantage out of the fight? Because obviously, kills are great, but the second question that you have to ask is, what can I get out of the fight? Like say you get a kill at Soul Lane. Now, can you get all of those backs because you know the jungle is somewhere else, and you know they're up, or do you know if you can push up red buff or push into the other jungle? And there's so much farm now. This is definitely going to change, but in the previous split, like actually finding those advantages were super super huge, and
Wow,
I
way to
think
steal
Zeus
my
Juice failed to
thunder.
capitalize.
Way to steal my thunder there, Jeremy. I was literally just going to talk about it too. You know, with that early aggression that they had, I don't feel like they pushed the lead and the kills that they had early. You know, I don't think a big thing for me is, you know, when looking at a team, like, do you win a fight? And when you win the fight, what do you get out of it? Are you just fighting to fight, or are you, you know, like, okay, we're going here and we're going to take blue buff, and if we get a kill out of it, we get a kill out of it. We're looking to take blue. That's the objective, you know, or is it just, oh, we're going to kill him and, you know, blue buff's not up, XP camps aren't up, the backs aren't up, you know, like if there's nothing to gain, you really don't gain much except maybe, you know, putting a solo laner behind and all that. And I will admit, I think Margie played amazing that game. I think Margie really won that solo lane. Love you, Boogie, but Margie definitely won that one in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I know personally that that team has been looking into that game and really taking to heart the advice, which is try and take the advantage forward, not just getting kills. Kills are great, but the farm is even better, or the objective, and it becomes very important when we come into this next patch because there's so much more on the map now. Now, there's other camps in the XP to figure out. There's now the Draugr over in Duo Lane. There's green buff. There is a ton to think about now, and the lessons that they learned are even more important as they go into their next game coming up. And that's going to be a big fight for them. Their next game that we'll talk about soon. But if anyone has no objections, we can move on to the next game.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right, you good, Josh?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right, so the next game on the majors list, we have the Obsidian Mages versus the Pittsburgh Phantoms. I would like someone else to start out with their opinion since this is my team. So,
No,
Red?
no.
No. Red, if you would like
um,
to.
yeah, this one was an interesting one to watch. Um, this one was a tough one for me because, I mean, I obviously have a couple of people that I'm pretty well acquainted with on the mages by the names of Slim and Scarab. Um, but the whole thing just seemed out of place. Like their entire team just didn't seem like they were playing as a team. The mages almost looked like it was prospects still. And I know that they had scrimmed before. I know that they had played together before. They were trying to work out, how dynamics were going to work because Scarab's a mid main, and they've got other people playing out of their roles, and Jule was just coming into a competitive season for the first time, and there was a lot there where um there were enough kinks in the hose that the flow never happened. And I think that this game was a representation, or this set was a representation of that. The O2 was, and I mean, I'm not going to discount what the Phantoms did. The Phantoms played well. They played very, very well. But I think the O2 scoreline is more a representation of how out of sorts the mages were rather than how dominant the phenoms or the phantoms were. Um, and I mean, I originally went 2-0 to the mages because I thought, wow, the mid laner's great. I think the duo has good synergy. I think this is going to be good. I think that is going to be good. And I was completely wrong. The synergy never clicked between the mid laner and the jungler. The duo lane, the way that whole thing set up really never got the ball rolling. I think Scarab looked a little out of sorts in the ADC role. Maybe it's because he's more comfortable with mid. I know he'd been trying to work on ADC and trying to prep for this season, but there were so many questions that kind of either had half answers or just never really got off in the first place. Um, and it was kind of sad to see. And I know we'll get to roster changes later, but getting up to this one, I mean, I think that kind of took a toll on the mental of the team, and because of that, I mean, now the mages look different. So I think it's gonna
Yeah.
be I think it's gonna be very, very tough for them to bounce back from this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is an appropriate time to talk about it. So, going forward, Obsidian Mages will be looking to replace somebody on their roster. Jule has left the team, so she will be ineligible to play for the remainder of Season 3. Not that it looked like she wanted to, but yeah, when it came to this game, so I personally, even before Jule leaving, didn't think the Mages were going to be a top contender. Not that the Phantoms are either. I think the Phantoms are a fairly middle of the road team. They can beat good teams, but there are teams that are lesser than them that they could certainly lose to, depending on the performance of certain individuals. Um, sort of how the tier lists have gone. I tend to agree with the end result, not necessarily with some of the placements of the players. I think 3 or 4 is probably an appropriate spot, but I think the Obsidian Mages were unquestionably a bottom 3 before this, and now they are going forward. Um, and that kind of showed up in the results. Game 1 was a rout. Um, the game was pretty much over by minute 18. It dragged on for about 5 more minutes before Titan was down. Um, I, and I say the game was over as in the Phantoms had full control over the pace of the game. They had full control over the farm, the map. The enemy team was pushed into their Phoenix rooms. So that's what I mean by that. And game 2 dragged on for an absurd amount of time for a reason that I can't truly point out. I think there was a significant amount of misplay by Kexin in the jungle. I think he played very well on Arachne against Desi, and then didn't really do well. I think they played very disorganized game too, just like making their own calls, making individual plays on the Phantom's end, and it cost them almost the game. There were moments where it was definitely unsure whether or not which team would win, but they managed to have 2 back-to-back quadra kills, one on stages and then one on Duck, which resulted in the game result that we see here. So the actual set result doesn't really reflect how close game 2 was, but in the end, this is still the result I expected and would have predicted if it weren't for them being my team. Um, I, I, I just simply believe the mages before were not quite a well put together squad, and now it's even worse going forward. They're going to struggle a lot this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you on that concept. Looking at the early draft or tier lists from, the way too early tier lists or the, whatever you want to exactly call them, preseason, way too early to decide. I think the draft was lacking a little bit from the mages. And I think the Phantoms had a well-rounded draft. Mark is a great captain, a great coach. Stages is just nasty. Stole my pick with that one. And Duck's just always been good. He is a two-time champ. You can't really down him on that one. He's really done a lot, I think, in the past 2 seasons. And I feel like he's going to be a make or break again on this team that he's on now. They're a well-rounded squad, and honestly, again, I haven't watched this game, but I would have predicted a 2-0 in favor of the Phantoms on that one, and I'm not exactly surprised it came out as that at the end of the set.
All right. Thank you. Skeet from the car. As you may have noticed, the audio quality decreased, but, we're still chilling. Uh, you know how it is. QSL, nothing is truly ever 100%, but we try, for sure. Um, that
We
that ends it
vibing. We
for
vibing.
yeah, we
Hey.
vibing. Hey, I'm gone. Um, yeah, so that ends it for the majors teams. The Kings Dukes and the Arkan Dragons game will be played at a different time. They were forced to reschedule due to roster issues, people being on vacation, people moving, getting a new job, all these sorts of things. These things are real life problems. They happen. At the end of the day, there are no prizes here, and this is an amateur Smite League. So bear in mind these things happen, and they have, what is it, Red? 7 weeks to find a time to complete this set.
Yes. So for those who are unfamiliar with the full calendar of QSL, so we have built in a week 8, which was sort of a catch-all kind of if there was an issue that arose and a game needed to be rescheduled, we could put it in that week 8. So essentially, there are 7 weeks of games that have already been scheduled for each team. If a team needs to reschedule, they can reschedule to play 2 games in 1 week, or they can opt to put that extra game into week 8. That being said, all regular season games must be played by the end of week 8.
Yeah, so week 8, like, say if everything is good, no teams need to be rescheduled by the end of week 7, then week 8 will essentially dissipate into the mist and we go right into the All-Star break.
Yep.
But if teams need it, it's going to be there.
Yep.
It's specifically for issues that have happened in the past. We do, in fact, listen and try and respond. We are not entirely simple creatures. We do have methods to solve problems, and this is what we've come up with. And every team has 2 reschedules. Every team, not every organization. So, if it arises that any team needs a reschedule because of, players are on vacation and you don't want to field a inferior squad, you go for it. It is the summer. I do anticipate some people in August being gone, and that's that. Um, real life. But
Yeah.
that is the situation. So our predictions at least will stay. Skeet can certainly chime in
I was
with a prediction at some point if he
I
would
was
like to.
just about to say it. I was going to be like, I was waiting for you to finish. I was going to be like, I'm going to throw in my late week 1 prediction. I predict a 2-0 in favor of the Knights, and I don't honestly think it's going to be all too close, just in that aspect.
I do
I
too.
feel like that. I feel like that is a very strongly drafted team with not a lot of weaknesses. So that's my opinion on that one. There's my late prediction for you.
Well, there you have it, folks. The big Skeet prediction. So that finishes up for the majors week 1 recap, and we can now move on to the minors 4 games. So the first one that comes to mind, of course, is the Booney Boys versus Ferryman, an 0 for 2. Now this actually surprised me a lot because I did hear scrim results and I looked at the rosters, and the Ferrymen had a couple players that I were under suspect that were not going to play to performance that they did in this game. I will not point them out, but um, in the past I've seen them underperform and um, just generally didn't think that they would really perform up to task. Still, but it seems that they've really cleaned it up, which is a fantastic thing to see. A lot of these players have improved a lot in the offseason, it seems. And whatever it was, it really, really clicked, and Booty Boys just looked very out of sorts that entire game or set. Just not even as well coordinated as the Ferrymen, which is very odd because there were really only a few scrims. Um, and I heard about all of them, and it didn't really sound too well for the Ferrymen, but they really pulled in. They elected on a comp that they were comfortable with. They executed and won both games, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, so it was kind of, I thought it was going to be closer than that. At the end of the day, I mean, I did still predict it in favor of the Ferryman, and you did as well. But each one of us put it 2-1. And it was because we were looking at things going, well, when we look at the comps, when we look at, how the teams are made and maybe how it's all going to pan out in the end, these teams are supposed to be a lot closer than what they are. But Booney Boys had to reach to their bench for their first game. Arisen had to come off. There were a lot of switching around. Tubby follower Niall was not able to play, so they were without their main mid player, which in the game
They
of
had a field
Smite,
in FA, yeah.
they
Right?
did not field an FA. I don't
Oh, they
believe. Did
didn't.
they? Oh
Hold
no,
on,
they
hold
did.
on.
They
Well,
had to field an FA because Uncle Fable didn't
Yeah,
show up either. That's right.
they
yeah,
had a majors to minors. Oh wait, no.
Yes, they had Yuri fill in.
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
Yuri fill in, and I'll talk more on that in a second. You continue here.
Yeah,
continue your
so
thoughts
they
there.
had Yuri fill in and solo. Arisen played support, and then Jeering moved from support to mid. And honestly, it looked like they were kind of playing. I mean, they were playing out of position, and it looked like they were playing out of position. Um, I it was really tough for me because again, I was broadcasting this game, I was casting this game, and it again looked like things were a little out of sorts. It looked like it was a prospect game. The coordination wasn't there. The timing was not there for a team that's playing competitive. Um, I think the biggest issue that Booney Boys had was the support in the jungle. Um, Sphinx didn't have quite the timings going into lanes properly and just didn't seem to coordinate well with his laners. And because of that, he ended up falling behind. He wasn't able to get the ganks off properly. And there were a couple of times where he just kind of said, I'm so far behind, I got to go farm. And that's what he ended up doing. He tried to farm as best he could. Arisen on the support, he tried. He genuinely tried. But, I mean, he almost looked out of his depth a little bit trying to play against Raptor and Hercules in that mid support duo, and it was disgusting what those guys were able to pull off. um Again, Raptor, I didn't realize it until later on, but Raptor and Herc won a championship, or at least went to the final in season 1, and now they're kind of doing it again on the Ferrymen in the minors, and they're going up against, players that played in the minors last year. So I was not expecting it to be as much of a rout, but I thought it was going to be, at least with week 1, I was thinking, okay, everybody wants to have their main rosters here. And Booney Boys couldn't do that, and I think that's where they fell hardest on week 1.
Uh, I mean, I'm gonna agree to disagree with you here. I think Raptor, like this was one of the games I actually found the time to watch, and I'm really happy I did. I thought Yuri coming down from the majors, I thought it was really going to give a big boost to the Booney Boys. I really thought that they were going to take this set. But I mean, you guys kind of missed out on talking about it, but I'm not going to let it go unnoticed. I think Omega Bulldog, I think he played out of his mind. He showed why he was the most improved player last season. Immediately right off the bat, he's going up against a majors player coming down onto the minors team to sub in for them. And I really think he showed out. If I remember correctly, I think he soloed Yuri 2 or 3 times that set, just absolutely dominated that lane, and really gave a big spark for what I think was needed by Booney Boys to kind of be a spark for them. And I think he really shut Yuri down and didn't really give him a chance to carry in the way that he probably needed to be able to. And I think that was a huge part of the Ferryman success that set. Alongside, man, it's been a minute, but I'm pretty sure Raptor played out of his mind. I think on Scylla, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played Scylla. I do remember it right. He just played amazing. I think the biggest key points for that team winning was Raptor playing in mid on Scylla, absolutely out of his mind in that game, and Bulldog just showing out, absolutely showing out. And to touch on what you talked about also a little bit, Booty Boys really looked out of place. Jeering in mid, caught out of position a lot of times on Janus, who is actually pretty hard to get caught out as, you know what I mean? I was very surprised, him dominating ADC all last season. He came to mid, he looked very lost. So I think for them to have success later on in the season, they need Tubby back to play in their games, and they need to put Jeering back into that ADC role. And I feel like they'll play a lot better than they played last week.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree. I try to generalize it for the most part, but I was on the cast that game, and I was saying, Omega was voted the most improved player in the majors of last season, and being drafted into the minors, might have dealt a little bit to his mental, but at the same time, there's a lot to play for. There's a lot to prove, and he just proved it that he just beat a majors sub who also is a solo main, if I recall Yuri's roles correctly. So
I'm not sure. I think he switched to the jungle. He played a lot of jungle last season,
yeah,
but
he
he was
switched
a
to the
solo
jungle.
main. He was a solo main prior.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Season one, he was a solo player, and then season 2, he switched to the jungle, and I think he kind of rolled with it. But I mean, you don't just forget how to solo. I think that was just Bulldog showing off that he has what it takes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I want to get at is that Omega played just excellently, and I will attest to it because now that I do recall, I do talk to Adrian a little bit, and he never felt quite right in the jungle, honestly. Like even if he played well, he never quite liked it. He said to me, I believe he says he hates the jungle, and he was going to try and support in this season instead. And he ended up playing solo in this game, and which was his original role, his favorite role, and it didn't quite work out well for him, which is unfortunate. But it also, I think, it shows the tenacity for Omega because Omega was just all over that lane the entire time. Just winning it 100% both games. Or yeah, both.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a performance from him. And yeah, like out of the players that I thought might not play as well, um, Raptor really, really showed up. I love the dude. I wasn't quite sure how he would look because, he played in a different role for a very long time last season, and I don't know how much he's been practicing, but he definitely showed that he has some stuff up his sleeve if he really needs it. So, kudos to him, of course. But I believe, unless anything else to add, Josh, we can move on.
No, I don't have anything else to add with that one.
All right, so next we move on to the Lil Noms versus Chosen Guans, and I do want to make sure this is correct. This was a 2-1 victory here for the Lil
You
Noms.
guys. Yeah, this was a 2-1 victory because Little Nam showed up 15 minutes late to the game.
There we go. That's
Yeah.
why I was confused. Yeah, so that is a 1-game forfeit for
Mm-hmm.
Lil Noms, and so Chosen Guans do get a point via getting that 1 game, but the rest of it went most of what we predicted, which is that the Lil Noms get that 2-0 actual played victory.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, go
the
ahead.
the understanding, or I should say, the prediction of what was going to happen in this game, the overwhelming force, what we kind of expected were the weak spots in Chosen Guans, kind of reared their ugly heads. And because of that, we're like, oh yeah, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. And then Little Noms goes, we're just not going to show up for 15 minutes. Just to, and it almost felt as I looked over and looked at the score. It's like you guys knew because you listened to the podcast that you were going to win 2-0 and you said, we want to make this spicy. We're just not going to show up and forfeit the first game just to mess with predictions. I mean, it just felt that way. It did. Um,
Yeah.
because they played up to the expectation. Little Noms, in my opinion, played up to the expectation that I thought they would play at.
Yeah. Honestly, Lil Noms is the team to beat in the minors. Obviously kudos to Skeet because he fucking drafts good, but um, yeah, like they are the team to beat. And Chosen Guans, their draft was difficult because of moves made around them. I'm sorry, Lynn, that I took your target player twice in a row. Um, and other players, other teams took her players that she had targeted too.
Mm-hmm.
Very unfortunate, but such is draft and such is life at that point. That team is a little bit weak. I don't think they are the worst of the worst. Like I don't think they are confirmed just bottom, but they are limbering on that. So I'm going to be very excited to see how their changes in their roster improve it because Kush is gone from that team. They picked up Kamazots, which he played in a scrim for my minors team, and he played very well at a position that he said he was garbage at. So I'm very interested to see how well that team can improve, but I think we are going to see something better moving forward. To be honest, but yeah,
There was also
the
another change in that roster as well.
with AWSM getting dropped today.
Yes, and MLG has been picked up for their solo lane.
Yeah, I believe that was because AWSM can't schedule games well enough for them. So that's the reason. Not because he's bad, because I think he was fine, honestly.
Pause that
For
real
that team.
quick. Hang on, something happened with the recording, I think.
So
Oh, there we go. Okay, it's back. Sorry
okay, cool.
for all of those who are listening. The screen just froze for some reason, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys were actually getting the QSL content that you wanted.
Yeah, I mean the podcast is very popular, but we will. um, goddamn, that did make me lose my train of thought there for a moment.
Sorry.
But yeah, that was my expectation that Lil Noms were gonna run that team. Lil Noms are the team to beat. They aren't unbeatable, but I think with what the Chosen Guans had at the time, it was very much not really a question in my opinion. And now we can have the glorious Skeet tell us what he has to say. Skylar, where are you? You going through a dead zone? You might be going through a dead zone.
He is muted right now, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to hear from him just yet.
We'll give it one more moment. Skeet, Skeet, Skeet. Yeah, he might be. Since he was driving, so
Yeah.
he said he would lose connection for a moment. So we will just move on, I guess. It's his team anyways, so whatever.
Yeah.
The next one that we'll talk about, and this has a little bit of controversy, one might say, is the Obsidian Knights versus the Charlotte Fury. This is a set that is somewhat in limbo because of a lot of extenuating circumstances that happened on top of each other that resulted in things we couldn't really predict in real time, which is unfortunate. But we hope that we can in the future try and avoid the situation. But essentially, the issue is that neither team at 15 minutes past scheduled start time was able to actually field a team. However, the Charlotte Fury were issued the FF for game 1, even though at that instance the rules suggest that both teams either reschedule or FF the set for both of them.
So
Instead,
I'm gonna kind of correct that a little bit.
Isn't that how that works? The rules?
Well, so that would have been correct, except for the fact that there was a sub that was ready to go for the Obsidian Knights because they thought that that sub was legitimate. So there was a team that was ready to play. The
But
problem
that fielded team was illegitimate.
well, yes, that fielded team was illegitimate, but I also learned that that player that was illegitimate was actually tried to be or was courted by both teams to try and play that game. So it was not done in any maliciousness, or with malicious intent, I should put it that way. That being said, due to the extenuating circumstances of there being an illegitimate sub during game number 2, the FF does go to the Knights on that one. Charlotte will pick up that one as a win. And then game 3, which was played, game 3 of that set for that one, will go to the Knights because that one was played with both legitimate rosters with no subs. So it is a 1-1 draw as of right now, with game 3 being rescheduled at a later date. So
Yes.
talking with the mods, this was something that we talked about for days. This was not something that was a knee-jerk reaction. I had to piece through a lot of evidence to try and figure out how this was going to work. Did somebody do something that they didn't know that they knew that this was a bad thing and they wanted to do it anyways? They were just trying to get the win, or they were trying to, what was the whole thing behind this? And after gathering all the evidence that I could, Liam was also there. He is another mod that is a non-owner. And we kind of tried to talk this out and figure it out and look at it from different angles so that it was as fair as possible to the players that did show up and did compete, and make sure that everything was as much on the level as we possibly could make it, while still making sure that the team that infringed and the team that legitimately won were both not overtly or overly punished for something that ultimately was a misunderstanding and a miscommunication on both sides. And so because
Yes.
of that, we said, you know what? There was a legitimate win, there was a legitimate problem. We will support the legitimate skill that was done, but we will also take legitimate action against something that should not have occurred. That being said, we are not going to let this decide the outcome of an entire set. We will still allow the two teams to play out game 3 so that they can come in guns blazing with their full rosters to have a good game 3, and let the team's skill decide what this is going to be rather than just some what might be perceived as an arbitrary mod decision. At the end of the day, we want Smite to be played, and the feeling was that this allows Smite to be played in the most fair way possible.
Yes, yes.
So
In this
it,
case, yeah.
yeah.
I'm completely. Hey, do you have a fault like a final thought there? So that
Well,
way I can.
I was just going to say, so just to give a little bit of background as to what the decision was and how it's going to play out. So Game 3 is being rescheduled and will be played between Obsidian Knights and Charlotte Fury at a later date that is to be determined. But as of right now, it's still 1-1. So if there are any other questions, I know this was being talked about back and forth by a lot of people. If there are any other questions, you can always reach out to a mod on the Discord and say, I'm not understanding why this is it when the rules state this or when that, states that. We understand that. We wanted to make sure that this was a fair way for both sides to say, hey, this isn't, unduly punishing one side or another. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to have fun. We want to be able to play Smite in a fair and competitive environment. And I think this is the way that everybody kind of gets to do that without undue duress and interference.
Yeah. So what I wanted to bring up in regards to this set was that while of course I am an owner, I'm playing a neutral party as best I can here. My view was exactly the same as Red's and many of the other mods. We just wanted to make sure that it was played fairly and that everyone was able to have a good time in accordance to the rules that we put out. Ultimately, I don't think either team was trying to gain an unfair advantage. I think it was a very simple misunderstanding that has led to this unfortunate circumstance. Um, some people are going to feel rubbed the wrong way in the end, I think. But I think this allows at least to determine for sure that this set was, the outcome of it is verifiable in terms of both of the team's skills. And not only that, but I'm trying to think of the one point that I had. It's more on the lines of it just left my mind here. I'm sorry. Um, I was trying to think of the set we have to talk about next, but uh where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hey, yeah, Skeet. Speak to what you want to speak about.
Well, if we're talking about that set, like the biggest thing I have to say when it came down to anybody voting on or making a decision, it's mostly just let them play. Like, you could just be like, oh, these are the rules, and you broke a rule. Like, there was obviously other circumstances going on, things happened, stuff was overlooked, which we'll definitely work on in the future, trying to make sure, it doesn't happen again. We catch it before it becomes a problem, but as of right now, I think we can all agree, just let them play. You know what I mean? You don't want to force a team to have to forfeit a game, posthumously because something was missed. Like give both teams a shot to prove their worth, and I think it'll be a fun game to watch. Best of ones are always fun because anything goes. You can really catch things that throw you off, and who knows? It could be a playoff standing later in the year. That this week one weird outcome happens to somehow win for a team because they won a set and have the extra points towards their name.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I finally got my head back on. Sorry it fell off, but um, what I wanted to say is that a couple people tossed around the ideas of different individuals enforcing the Rule 30 about games being played on time. I think at the moment, personally, that allowing the captains to decide whether or not, based on individual circumstances that they're given, whether or not that they will enforce it personally on a set to set basis, because that allows the most human interactions here. Because if we just blanket black and white it, as some people suggested with the mods, like if the game isn't started by 15 minutes, we determine, all right, this is an FF. If it doesn't start by 20, this is a set FF. I think that is extremely unfun because then there's no smite played at all. And even if it's late, as long as it doesn't significantly screw up someone's day-to-day schedule, just let them play. Is kind of what I want to get at. And I think that's the viewpoint of most of the mods is that we don't want to blanket black and white and force rule 30 because that should be up to each and individual captain or owner to advocate for their team if they feel like they're being unjustly treated or allow that leniency for extenuating circumstances. In this case, there were a couple people who 15 minutes before the set just couldn't make it because of something that happened right then and there. So, real life does play a factor, and I think this allows the most human response in regards to an actual league issue. Um, anything to add to that, Red, before we move on?
No, I think we need to move on. I think what's been said is definitely been said on that.
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we move on to the final set that we will talk about for week 1. We have King's Knights versus Arc Lords. The King Knights take a 2-0 victory, and I will bring it to Red to discuss it first.
Yeah, this one was kind of a surprise to me. Again, I thought it would be close. That's why I went 2-1 with it. But I thought the Arc Lords, again, having that ability to choose the first overall pick in the minors, I thought they had a very good setup going into this game. And for some reason, I in the back of my mind, I'm going, okay, I look at how the setup is going to work, and it's going to be, I look at the matchups and I'm like, well, mid lane should go to Arc Lords, solo should go to Arc Lords, jungle, pretty even. It's really if Snowy is going to be able to just run the game, but it wasn't that at all. Um, it was a good matchup back and forth, and I think that, I mean, overall, I think Arc Lords could have easily taken a game, at least a game out of this. They might have even been able to take 2 out of them. But the King's Knights were able to just close down in those moments that they needed to. Um, there, I'm trying to remember because again, it's been a while since this game. But in the back of my mind, I, at least in the first game, there was this slow snowball that you could. It's sort of that train down on the track where you can see the light first before you can see the train, and you see it coming, and you know you have to get off the track, but you just can't get off the track, and here it comes. And that's kind of what happened there. Um, the kicking and struggling by Arc Lords just didn't quite move as well as the Knights were able to control pace. And that's exactly what happened. The Knights were able to control the pace, I think, in both of those games. And that was the end of the day, 2-0 towards the Knights. I thought it was very well played by both sides, but definitely kudos to the Knights for making sure that they carried it home.
Yeah, I agree. Just like looking at the rosters, looking at it going, and I think uh the the Knights, they have a very inconsistent roster in terms of their game to game play, but I was extremely surprised at how well they showed up. They locked in, they played it, they got it all the way through, and I think that's going to be the King's Knights at their best. Is what they did here in this set. Is you're going to see Achilles and Snowy lock in and pop off, and they have a lot of synergy, so they can play off that very well. I thought the Arc Lord's draft was very strong, um, and that's why I didn't think that this result was going to be like this with the Knights winning, but they pulled through, and that's very exciting. That adds a lot of different factors as they move into the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see this Kings Knights team play throughout the season. I really think they surprised this game. I personally would have thought Arc Lords drafted very well, as you said. I think Kings Knights is going to be a fun one to watch. They look like they already have a lot of synergy coming together, and they look like they really showed out this week. I only caught one game out of it, but it looked like a really good game to watch. I caught about first 10 minutes and drafts and bans, and that was about it. But I'm excited, this season. I think mini minors is going to be extremely competitive this season. A lot more competitive than most of us had thought. Like, I really think there's going to be a lot of close games this season. I think that's kind of one of them to look at. You might think that Arc Lords drafted well, and I think a lot of these players have a lot to prove and a lot to show, and I think it's going to be a great season based on just this set alone. It just shows how much things can change.
For sure. I think anticipatory suggestions coming into the minors is that it's I don't want to say it's more exciting than majors, but a lot of people are looking at it with a lot more, discretion because it just seems to be so exciting. You know what I mean?
I mean, I will say that there's a lot more for those that have been in season 2. There's a lot more familiar names in the minors than there are in majors. And there's a lot of people that you kind of expected to see up in majors, and you're going, wait a second, they're on minors? And I think that's where that excitement comes from, because you know that the level between majors and minors is not there's not this huge gap between what a majors team is and a minors team is. And because of that, it makes it that much more, it makes the quality that much better. And so even on very close teams, like I would say the Knights and the Arc Lords, I mean, in my power rankings, I literally have them next to each other. I have them in the middle of the pack, but I have them right next to each other. And I think that played out between the two of them. I still think it was a really good game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But that exhausts our time for the week 1 recap, and we finally move into the spicy stuff. The thing that a lot of people want to see. The predictions for week number 2, and we will, as always, start out with the majors. We have Phenoms versus the Reapers. And honestly, I don't know really how this is going to go. There are a lot of surprises here, of course. I know that Phenoms have a very strong team there, but Reapers were able to pull out a little bit of a surprise there in week 1. I think that Phenoms will in fact take the set, but I'm trying really to discuss here right now live with myself if Reapers can manage to pull out a game, and if so, how? If I take a look real quick, if I can, at the rosters exactly, um, I do think that they can maybe pull out a game. If you see that Inori and Poyo really show up to this, and that's not to say that like Jinji can also do a couple stuff from solo lane, if he's allowed to. I think they can pull out a game win. I will predict Phenoms taking this 2-1, but that's only in the sense that if we can see that Reaper's team really pull out again and just frag out, then that's going to be a result. It's definitely going to be a hard fought set for sure. I will not be surprised if Phenoms take it 2-0. I will predict 2-1, but I think that it's going to be a lot of close stuff there, honestly.
Yeah, this one is, I think this one's a lot closer than some people are gonna think. I I think if you're on that Phenoms hype train, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, Reapers, yeah, not a problem. It'll be a 2-0. But the Reapers have some. I mean, I wouldn't call them. I don't think they're necessarily the number 2 team or even a contender team right now. But I think they are just talented enough that they are scary. Um, I think they are just ability. They have just enough talent to be the team to look out for. And I actually list them as my dark horse. I'm actually going to agree with you and go 2-1 on this one as well.
I'm not sure if my prediction is going to surprise anyone, but I predict Phenoms 2-0 just because, there's only a little bit of bias, just a tiny bit. But I don't think it'll be a roll. That's not, saying 2-0 isn't saying they're going to dominate each game. I really think Inori's going to do a lot of things from the jungle. Or actually, no. Hang on. This
No,
is the
there's a
time.
change.
This is the time to talk about the roster change. That's right. I remember I
Yeah.
talked about it earlier. Inori is going back to his I think it's season 5 or season 6 main role of ADC, which he hasn't mained in comp for a while. And Poyo going into the jungle, which I'm excited for. I'm extremely excited for it. I'm also excited to see what Bigfoot can do. He went undrafted, but he was one of the players I was looking at because I didn't think as many players that fell to me were going to fall onto my team. But personally, I think my draft went very well. But I mean, I think they have a solid squad. I think Jinji's a good match for Boogie over in solo. I have not seen Poyo in the jungle ever. And Inori hasn't played ADC in a while, but I trust in Armor and I trust in Omar to kind of keep up in both those lanes. I'm not all too worried on those. So I feel like it might be a close set, but I still think Phenoms pull it out 2-0. But who knows? There's surprises absolutely everywhere. Poyo could be a fragger in the jungle for all we know. We haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy is taking a quick bathroom break, Red, if you want to
Yeah.
move
So
on to
we
the
are
next
we
one.
are we are missing our beloved Cooter. For those of you who are wondering what his predictions are going to be, we will try and get those from him in the next day or two. But the next one up is Obsidian Mages and Booney Gang. This one is looking to be a real cracker. Uh in my tier list or my power rankings that I have them next to each other.
Yeah,
Um
I'm
and
excited for this one.
I think this one's going to be really really close.
Yeah, I personally think this is going to be an absolute banger of a set. Whew, words are hard.
Yes, words are hard.
Words are very hard. I feel like mages are they took a big loss last week with Jule dropping from the league, so they lost I believe first round pick or second round pick. I honestly
That was their
cannot.
first round pick. That was the number 6
Yeah.
pick overall that disappeared from them.
So I think in that aspect, it's a little worrisome.
Mm-hmm.
Losing your first pick, that's hard. You know what I mean? But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the competition in this league it's up there. I feel like there's a lot of players who are close to each other. I don't think there was this massive difference from round 1 to say round 3 or 4. I feel like a lot of these players are just really good skill wise, and I think even some of the free agents that went undrafted because they didn't make the cut for minors by being Masters players, I think even them are really good. And I'm also excited to see who the mages decide to end up picking up in that spot. But
Yeah.
Oreo filling in. Oreo is a solid player in the past. I believe I've only seen him ADC though. I don't think I've ever seen him in mid. But I feel like that team might be able to hit the ball rolling. I'd be a little surprised, or I wouldn't be surprised if I saw Scarab go back to his main role in mid and Oreo maybe ADC. I feel like it would give him a better shot. But I personally think predictions wise, I gotta give it to Booney Gang on this one, simply because I feel like with that drop, the new team going on, everything changing, I feel like mages are going to be a little lost this week. I'm not sure if they've scrimmed yet, but I don't think they're going to have too much synergy at all, other than that Scarab Slim combo, which we've all been looking for. So
Mm-hmm.
personally, I think it's going to go 2-0 in the way of Booney Gang. Just because of that, I feel like it'll be close, but I don't think I feel like it's going to be a great set. Like honestly, I feel like it's going to be pretty close games, but I think Booney Gang's synergy in late game team fights is going to kind of take the win in both of those. But I still feel like it's going to be a banger of a set.
Mm. Well, Jeremy is back, so if you would like to take it away for your prediction on the Obsidian Mages and Booney Gang.
I would love to. I would love to. Yeah, sorry, nature does call sometimes, but yeah, I tend to agree with what Skeet's thoughts were. I think depending on who the mages pick up to replace that spot, it could spell a different story. But I'm pretty sure that Booney Gang out of laning phase is going to simply dominate and win this game very handedly. Win the set handedly, 2-0. Um, I I just don't think coming out of that it's going to work very well. The mages are in a very, very rough spot due to extenuating circumstances that are out of really anyone's control. And again, we already touched upon it. Um, I do believe that their draft was somewhat weak too, which does not help the situation. So yeah, Booney Gang 2-0. If the mages win anything at all, it's laning phase. I think they can kind of make it interesting in team fights, but if Boonigang does exactly what they want to, if they are able to get the game plan and the team comp that they want, it's not going to be a fun experience out of the 10-15 minute mark for Obsidian Mages.
Yeah, and this one pains me as well because it's like I have them right next to each other and it's so close for me, but I had them right next to each other with Jule being there. And now you take that number 6 overall pick and you rip it out of their hands. You take the person that they were expecting to be a core member of the team that they would try to play around, and you take her away, and you have to plug that gap somehow. Um, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough, and this is one of the teams they have to beat in order to have a more favorable position when it comes to playoffs. This is one of those teams that, if for lack of a better term, is beatable for them, but I don't think I kind of agree with you guys. I don't think it's going to be there. I don't think that the synergy is going to be there. You've got to take on Sub Killer who can dominate a game. You've got very comparable supports, very comparable mid laners. You've got to be able to take a team that's been able to work together and a team that hasn't been able to work together, and you got to figure out how do we overcome this? And I don't think the mages have what it takes right now to overcome it. Could we be saying something different in week 3 or week 4 or week 5? Maybe. But as of right now, I got to go Booney Gang and I got to go 2-0.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a rough situation. I genuinely hope that they can find someone to bounce back. It's a very unfortunate situation, and it really speaks to just sometimes you really need to think about sometimes your certain draft picks or make sure the mental integrity is there. There is deep vetting that can sometimes go into all of that. If somebody's coming in their first time in comp, they don't have fun, and then they drop off. It's very, very unfortunate indeed. But I think the mages, if they can make some decent moves, they can put themselves back into contention and get a playoff spot that maybe they would like more favorably. But we should move on to next matchup: the Kings Dukes versus the Zeus Juice. And oh boy, uh, what a matchup! Because Zeus Juice just got a set that they really didn't want to have, honestly, and they're going up against probably top 3 team in the Kings Dukes. This is going to
Top
be a
two.
very tough matchup there. Um,
I'd put it top two.
yeah, you can put it wherever you want to, Skeet, but I will give leniency. I think Kings Dukes is a very strong team. They drafted very strongly, and Zeus Juice, I don't think is going to have enough to cut it here. Honestly, with both teams that have played at least somewhat strongly, Zeus Juice has some synergy issues that hopefully they fixed by this point. But I'm going to give Kings Dukes this a 2-0 just because I know they can play well. I know that a lot of those players are just absolute fraggers, and I think Zeus Juice is just going to get overwhelmed by this team.
Yeah, for a
So
lot of the same reasons, I'm right there with you. I'm going 2-0 for Kings Dukes. It's I don't know if there's much else I can say in that one.
Honestly, based on I wrote it out earlier what I was thinking about, and thinking about this more, looking at the rosters back over and again, I'm gonna go with a surprising one here. I still think the Dukes are gonna win, but I'm gonna go off the train. I'm not gonna be a follower.
you
I
go two
think
one.
2-1. I think I'm gonna go 2-1 because I feel like the Dukes, they're a strong team all around, and in my personal opinion, they have a lot of solo players. Like as you said, they have a lot of fraggers. I'm not doubting anyone's ability,
But
anyone's
it's the
capability.
comms.
I think it's gonna come down to comms and late game. And although Zeus Juice didn't have a strong late game during week 1 versus the Phenoms, I feel like if they just fix that early game, they come out to that strong start again off the bat. I feel like Margie will definitely hold his own in solo against Sandman, which I think is going to be a big key factor to winning. Because if you let Sandman get fed, it's not going to end up very good. Um, but I feel like if they ride the wave of Rapid and ride that aggression, let Rapid kind of shot call, and they push some of that early kill and aggression, and they push it to take objectives, steal buffs, steal blues, steal greens at this point now. You know what I mean? You got all that
Hmm.
extra stuff in there. I really feel like they can take one. Hell, they might even be able to take two, but it's just based on the sheer talent on the Dukes. I'm gonna say they win the set, but I think Zeus Juice might be able to sneak one, which I think will be huge for morale for that team.
For
Because
sure.
nobody wants to get 2-0'd back to back. It don't feel good.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's gonna be just because some of us say 2-0 does not mean it will not be an exciting set or even one that is close. Because you can have two games that are very close. I think Zeus Juice does have a lot in the pocket. I think the Dukes have a lot of talent, and it depends on how all of these pieces interconnect going forward. Um, can the Dukes really play together instead of, as Skeet was saying, like 3 solo players? And can Zeus Juice really pull together with Rapid's excellent callouts and comms and find a decent mid and late game? A lot of that comes into play there. It's going to be a very exciting match for sure. One that you should watch. We are not recommending individual sets to watch. Obviously, we hope you watch all of them, but this is certainly one that is going to be absolutely fire, 100%. So look out for that. And I will move on to the final majors set of week 2. We have Arkan Dragons versus the Pittsburgh Phantoms. And as per tradition, I will defer my opinions on predictions to my fellow podcasters here. So, Red,
I'll
take it away.
Oh, you want to give it to Red? That's not
Oh,
Well,
well,
you'll have time, Skeet.
yeah.
Red. Red. I want to steal it from you. I want to come out the gate swinging on this one.
You know what? I'm gonna let
Uh,
you. I'm gonna let you go
Oh,
right
there we
ahead.
go. Go ahead.
you want to hear my hot takes?
Swing away.
Go
You want
for
to hear
it.
my hot takes? Can you go
Yes.
to rosters real quick? Because I need to relook at this.
Absolutely.
This is one
I
thing.
absolutely
Okay. I personally think 2-0 in favor of the Phantoms, and I'm gonna explain why.
can. Ooh.
I losing Kaneki, I think, because he's having or
Real life
something, and he's
issues.
having to take a step away right now. I think that team loses a lot. They're having a lot of problems from what I hear, internally in that team. And I honestly think the Phantoms is a well-drafted team. In my personal opinion, that team's a strong 3 or 4. Looking at the teams, you know, is Kexon starting now? Is that a real
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
The boy. I hope
Yeah.
you're listening, Kexon. You made it. He was I'm pretty sure he was pretty mad when he got drafted as a sub and didn't go to minors or start majors. And look at him now. I feel like that's a good fit though. Kexon stages I feel are going to be able to do a lot. I believe Kexon popped off last week on an Arachne pick because he's just a wacky boy like that. But I mean, Raven and Solo, stages in mid, that kind of speaks for itself. That's two extremely strong players. The first round pick in Duck, 2 times champ. I'll say it again. I said it when I was talking about the thing. He can't put Duck down. You know what I mean? And I feel like Gamer and Duck already have a lot of synergy. I know they're friends and they play together. I just think that's a well-rounded squad against a squad that's kind of scavenging to put their team back together and pick up the pieces from their captain, of all people, having to take a break and take a step back. And if you haven't heard it yet, you'll hear it here first. I believe Z Tantalus is taking over captaincy for that team, if I'm not mistaken. Other mods?
You are correct.
I am correct.
Interim, at least.
So, intermittently.
Yeah, he's the
but
interim
I feel like
captain.
that team is. I really feel like that team is going to kind of be picking up the scraps. Boomhev will be playing this week. I like to call him Throwhev. Just that's just him. It's old boy Throwhev. But I really feel like they're just lacking that firepower this week. I feel like they lost a strong player in their captain, and I don't think that because of all the issues and the problems they've had, I don't think they have a lot of scrims together, and I think it's going to show. I feel like there's going to be a lot of mistakes that I believe, the good players on the Phantoms are going to take advantage of, and I think it's going to be a quick 2-0. I don't think it's going to be extremely close. I think it's going to be pretty fast. But I am extremely excited. I'm not going to let you take this one from me. I want to see stages versus Olhea or Dylan in mid. I think that's going to be something to watch for in this game. That's going to be huge. That's what I would believe would be the top 1 and 2 mid, and they're going to battle. And I don't even think it's like a definite 1 or a definite 2. I think it's close, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch. And, that could be a make or break for this game if stages does pop off or not, or if Dylan pops off or not, or Olhea. But I still think the Phantoms just take it 2-0.
Ooh,
But
Yeah.
that is a
if the
spicy
Dragon
take.
if the Dragons sneak games though, it's gonna be on the back of Half Hero and Olhea. Or if Tantalus pulls out some wacky stuff like I have seen him in the past. But I really think Phantoms take this 2-0.
I mean, you
Yeah.
never know, man. You never know.
Yeah, you do never know, and I do want to chime in just for a moment and say, like, if you can go back to the rosters so that way I
Yep.
just like can see it visually. I was super excited to see this matchup of stages versus Olay. It's so amazing whenever you actually get to see like 2 top players, and this has shifted here and there regarding the tier lists of various people, but stages and Olay seem to be the best of the best in a very stacked mid lane. Like, there's a lot of very talented players at mid this season. So that is for sure an all-star matchup right there. And that alone is exciting. And as you said, Tantalus can pull something and he can pop off. Half Hero is a very talented player. Um, I agree that the Dragons are a little bit in disarray in terms of who can start and whatnot, but I for those matchups, I am so excited to see. So excited. There's a lot to watch for in this set for sure. But
Yeah,
I'll let
and
Red have his
uh,
prediction, of
thank
course.
you. Um, yeah, I know the Archon Dragons are going through some turmoil right now. Kaneki has some real life stuff going on. Um, we'll see what happens with Joe from New York. Some of the rumors and trade talk going on around right now. We'll see. Honestly, we shall see what's going to happen. Because even with that, even with trying to grab somebody, plug someone else in, I think it's gonna be a I think it's gonna be a great game, to be honest. I just want to see Stages and Olhea go at each other, and I want to see Half Hero and Kexen run riot. I think it's gonna be a fun game. I'm looking forward to this one. This will also be the first game by the Archon Dragons because they did not play their week 1 game. They rescheduled it. So this is kind of the all right, let's jump into the pond with both feet and see what happens. Um, I really, normally, if it was just between these two teams, the way they are set up now, as opposed to having Mark in there, um, I I lean a little bit in favor of the Archon Dragons. However, because of how influential certain players are at certain times, and that's another thing with um kind of the reason why I put Tantalus as low as he was on my tier list is because he was inconsistent. I've seen games where he was just kind of okay, and then I've seen games where he just popped off and he was up there with anybody. Um I don't know which Tantalus we're going to get this game, especially with now having the burden of being the interim captain on his shoulders. We'll see if it kind of focuses him a little bit or calms him down a little bit. I'm not 100% convinced on that, though. And because of that, I'm going to go a Phantom's victory, but I'm going to say 2-1 in favor of the Phantoms. So 2-1's my prediction.
All right. All right. Sounds good. So that does end the predictions for the majors, and we do move on to the minors predictions. The first one coming up, the Little Noms versus the Ferryman. And given the results that I saw in week 1, I will say a 2-1 victory for Little Noms. Simply because I think Ferrymen have a lot of synergy. I think they have a lot of very decent players there, but I think the Little Noms will still be in the end a team that has a little bit more talent, a little bit more push, a little bit more drive. Skeet has already told us that the Little Noms are fired up about this set. They want to show their stuff, and I'm very excited to what the outcome is. But I do think that these teams, at least from what we saw in week 1, are pretty close. And there are a lot of teams like that in the minors that appear to be, from their results, very close. So it's not like Lil Noms are running the show. Um, I just think that they will end up having the better of the Ferryman in the end. But honestly, I would not be surprised if it somehow goes very close sets and in the other direction. Honestly, so it's it's a very interesting set for sure. One that out of all of the matchups in the minors, I think is the most important for week 2.
Yeah. So if you paid attention to my power rankings, this is actually my prediction of the number 1 against the number 2 team in the minors. And this is sort of the quote unquote ideal uh how do I put it? The ideal finals matchup. Um but I I don't know. maybe it's just me and maybe it's just me wanting to be spicy, but I'm going 2-1 Ferryman on this one. Um, I think the Ferrymen have a lot of firepower. I think they're a little underrated, to be honest. Um, there's, I mean, if I looked at my power or my tier rankings, all of these players are in the top three. I can't see a player that's out of the top three in any of their positions at this point. And so this one, no matter who plays, to be honest, I think it's going to be a banger. I think this is going to be the game to watch this week.
For sure. Skeet.
Call me biased. I think 2-0 Lil Noms. I trust in the boys. I believe it was a strong draft. I'm excited to see the Ferryman this week, though. I feel like it could be close. It could, like, I feel like. Right, can you go to the rosters real quick? Because I just need to check something. I think
Sure.
I'm right, but I don't want to sound stupid. Okay, I was right. I'm excited to see what I think is the probable 1 and 2 solo laners go against each other. And I think that might be quite the deciding factor this week. I feel like solo lane could be deciding a lot. I think jungle is pretty even. I think solo's pretty even. Mids might be close based on the scrims. We might have a little edge in support. And I've never seen Louis ADC, but Peg is... I think he's a good ADC. He doesn't really play anything but jungle, so I don't see him very often, but I think we have the edge, in personal opinion. Obviously a little biased, they are the boys. But I'm excited to see just that solo lane matchup alone, and I think it's going to be a banger too. I think it's going to be a really good set, but I still think Lil Noms takes it 2-0.
All right. All right. We got the thoughts there from the biased man himself, Skeet. And we can move on to hell yeah. To the next matchup there. The Obsidian Knights versus the Booney Boys. So if you can move over to rosters for a moment here, my good sir, so that way we can see. So yeah, when it comes to this matchup here, the key is really, oh my god, this is actually a very tough match to really call, in all honesty, because I've seen how the Obsidian Knights play. Obviously, I've seen how the Booney Boys play in a limited fashion. There are a lot of factors here. This is going to be a very close game between teams that, you know, some people have predicted as not being very significant. Their drafts being sort of not bad, but also, given their positions, not best. However, I think I'm going to give the 2-1 victory to Booney Boys because of inconsistencies that I've heard about when it comes to the Obsidian Knights and otherwise. But this is definitely going to be a very close game depending on who is able to show up in terms of the subs, if they need them. So it's a very interesting one for sure, though. One to look out for, and one that I am not entirely confident in. And I'll be honest there, not entirely confident in terms of their outcome. Whoever would like to go next, for sure.
Skeet, take it away.
I want to let you take it away. I want to hear your opinion.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I mean, this one's really tough for me because I was on a team last season with Sphinx and Nile. If they are there and if they are the ones that are playing, if it's the starting lineup for Booney Boys, I think this is a very, very close game. That being said, I also saw what Peaceful was able to do, and I was surprised. If he has another game like that, if Define has an excellent game in solo like he's had previously, and if Chaos can hold his own against Bacon in the duo lane, I see Knights taking this one. I genuinely do. Um, I think if you keep jeering in the support, I think that's probably one of the worst spots for him to be in. Um, I don't think that he is a support player. He is fine in mid. He is better at ADC, in my opinion. But I just don't see him being that support player that is going to shot call or make the initiation difference. I don't see him in that role, and because of that, I think he has a lot to live up to. Now, could he prove me wrong? Absolutely. Um, but because of that, I'm actually going to go 2-0 to the Obsidian Knights this week. So there's your spicy take, Skeet. Take it away.
You took my spicy take. I also think 2-0 in the way of the Obsidian Knights. In my opinion, the obviously I wasn't here last week to talk about drafts, but I believe the Booney Boys draft was lacking. Like I love Nile, I really do. I personally think he was taken above a couple of guys that were just a little bit over the top with him, and it's nothing against him or anything. The boy plays on EU ping, and he still manages to get her done. So I mean, I'm not hating, but I think they're lacking in that mid lane right now, and they were definitely missing him last week. I'd love to see him come in and play, but I just truly feel that draft itself was lacking, and then you add on top of it the scheduling issues that arises from having an EU player on your team. And I think it makes it tough because I've even heard that Peaceful has, I believe it was Peaceful that I was told about earlier, that has a hard time scheduling because of work. I can relate to that one. Works really sucks. Don't grow up. It really sucks. But I feel like it's going to be a hard set to schedule. But if they get a time where it's both starting rosters on starting rosters, I still think Obsidian Knights take it. It might be close. It might not, but I think Obsidian Knights take it 2-0. And I don't see a way for Booney Boys to really take one. If they fully pull it out and they fully play as a team and synergize extremely well, they might be able to. But I don't see it happening this week because I feel like with scheduling issues, I don't think they've had a lot of scrims, or at least not a lot that I've heard of as a full squad. So for that reason, Obsidian Knights 2-0.
All right. We love diversity of opinion here on the podcast. Gives a lot of excitement, a lot to play for, of course, since a lot of you watch this or listen to it. So it's always very exciting to hear what everyone has to say. But we do move on to the next set, the King's Knights versus the Chosen Guans. And honestly, personally, I'm very excited for this because this is a if you can move back to the roster's better to be on, but at this point. But this is a matchup of friends, so to speak. Not a grudge match, an opposite of that one, I would say. A lot of people here on both teams are good friends with each other. They play a lot of games with each other. So it's gonna be very exciting, of course, to see how they play into it, that social aspect. But also a lot of changes on the Chosen Guans have made that squad a lot different than it was at the draft and at week one. So I think the Chosen Guans are a lot stronger, given that they no longer have um, Kush in the support role. I think that's a much stronger squad there overall. I honestly really can't speak to how the mid is going to go, but I think it's going to be a pretty close game, and it depends on whether Camazotz plays as well, because I saw him play before, and he's played very well. So I don't know how they're going to utilize the sub versus who's like the bottom fifth player, in their eyes. But it's so hard for me to truly decide here. But I think I will give the Knights a 2-1, given how they played in week one. They had the consistency that they needed. They played exactly as they needed to, and they have a significant amount of synergy. So that is what I'm going to play off of for my decision here today. But I do think the Chosen Quads are a much stronger squad now, and I think they can face this team. If anyone else would love to give their
I'm just
opinion.
kind of looking at it.
Yeah,
I, I
it's an interesting one for sure.
It is going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to come on. I think this one genuinely comes down to who pops off on the day of, because I think they are so close. I think Snowy has the advantage in support. I think his initiation and his ability to kind of coordinate his team is going to be extremely important. At the same time, it's going to be how well can Dummy Slick and Amish coordinate with Catgirl Chipotle to protect that middle lane, especially if she finds herself out of position. If she ends up in a if she ends up in an area where she's not supposed to be, is she going to be able to escape with her life? That is something that we have consistently seen as a a area that she needs to work on in her game. I think she's gotten better in it. I don't think she's quite where she needs to be in the, I would say, to to be where her team needs to be here to make sure that they can work on other things as well. I think that they need to protect her primarily and then work based off of that to go for objectives, to go for farm, to make sure that she's getting what she needs as well. But again, if you don't protect the cannon, it's not going to be able to fire late in the game. And I think that's the problem that the Guans are going to have. I am going 2-0 to the Knights.
I'm I'm gonna agree with you on that one on the 2-0 to the Knights. I think really it's really hard to say. I love Achilles in solo. I think he's extremely strong. And in all reality, I don't know a lot of the players on the Chosen Guans except for Lynn. But I mean, looking at the Knights, they're a well-rounded roster that I think just has the advantage, and I think it's going to be 2-0. And I can't really tell you how strong it's going to be as of right now. I think only time will tell on that one, but I feel like it could be a good set, but it could just as easily be a really good set, just as easily as it could be a wipe, just an absolute smack fest. And I think it depends on a couple factors, and like you said, keeping Lynn ahead in mid, putting her ahead in mid, making sure everything's getting done where it needs to there. And I really think that's what it's going to come down to, honestly. Uh, yeah, there's not much more for me to say on that.
Well, there you
But yeah,
have it.
2-0 Knights.
There you have it. So we do have a unanimous on the Knights winning there. As we do reach the final matchup here to discuss, we have the Charlotte Fury versus the Arc Lords. And as always, I will allow my fellow podcasters to take it away first for their predictions.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk to this one while Jeremy kind of fixes mic there.
Oh no, what happened?
You're going a little
Uploading,
robot
you
on
laggy
me.
boy.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
fuck
you
you.
went Dalek on me there. Um, so this is a tough one for me because the Arc Lords showed that they know how to draft. They know how to set themselves up for a win. They know how to work together as a team. And somehow, some way, they tripped at the finish line. Um, I have Honkler as one of the top solo laners in the league right now. And they're going up against the Charlotte Fury, who, I mean, I think they're kind of a middle of the road team. Um, I see Arc Lords as maybe middle of the road, maybe a little bit better than middle of the road. I'm not 100% certain with that. But, I mean, it's really tough for me because I really want to see both of these teams succeed with the players that they have. I know Zero, I know Telly, I know Yellowgen from last season, but there's also Cyber. Ice Fox is a very good friend of mine, and you look at both these rosters and go, Soul Lane could go one way, Jungle could go another way. You know, mid it could be completely even. How is this going to go? Honestly, this is a game that I think the Arc Lords might surprise people with. I think Charlotte is expected to win this game, but I think the Arc Lords are going to surprise some people. I'm going to go barely, just barely, by a hairbreadth, like half a hairbreadth. I'm going to go to the Arc Lords 2-1. I mean, I have every reason to go Charlotte Fury 2-1, but I'm gonna keep my spicy take. And I'm gonna go Arc Lords 2-1.
I'm gonna raise you one and flip the table and go Charlotte Fury 2-1 on the opposite side. I think it'll be close. These look like two pretty evenly matched teams. I feel like with Trans, Honkler, and Cyber, I feel like they can definitely pull one out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm extremely excited to see Atticus in the solo lane versus Honkler. I feel like he's underrated in the minors right now. I really feel like Atticus is extremely strong. He was one of the players that I originally drafted last season. I was sad I had to trade him away. He's a really good dude, and he's a really strong player. And he performed out even playing in support, which I believe is a secondary role. But I think either he told me or Kepri, who he's really good friends with, told me that he's not as strong in support as he is in solo, and I really think he's going to show out in solo this game. I've never seen Honkler play, but if he is, I mean, on your tier list you had him as number 2. If he is the number 2, I feel like this could be, honestly, I'd probably put Honkler. I'd put them interchangeable at 3 and 4 together because I don't know a lot of the other players, but I'm excited to see that, and I think it's going to be one of those games where most everywhere else is pretty close, and I think it's going to come down to that solo play again, just how they rotate, how they perform in team fights, and I feel like Atticus is going to have that edge. His comms are extremely good, and I feel like the Charlotte Fury are just going to team fight better in the late game. And that's probably what it's going to come down to. I'm even tempted to go 2-0 Charlotte Fury, but I think the Arc Lords are a good enough team to pull one out, and I feel like it's going to be a really good set to watch. So just barely, I think it's going to be 2-1. I think it could be 2-1 just as easily as it could be 2-0 Charlotte Fury, but I really think it's going to come down to that solo lane and how strong Honkler plays, but I've never seen him play, so I don't know if that's a little disrespect on his name or what it is, but I really think Atticus is going to be the deal breaker here. And if he does what I think he's going to do, I think he's going to pop out. And I think he's going to be a huge factor into Charlotte Fury taking this 2-1.
Yeah, it's a very exciting matchup for sure. I know that my Captain Zero is extremely excited to play against Cyber. Um, this team is wholeheartedly excited to play this game. Like they are not slacking on it. So it's gonna be very exciting. I've seen Atticus play against the Hawkler, and it's gonna be a fun time once again. I think Telly is severely underrated on a lot of people's tier lists, and he will play to the degree in which he plays, which is to say, don't let on her through. This is a personal opinion. If you let on her through, you might you might be throwing you might be this is a previous split opinion, but you might end up throwing the game. So I would say, I'm not going to give an opinion, but this is going to be a very fun matchup for sure. They've played the Arcloids before. I'm not going to say what the result was, but it was a very exciting scrim, and this is going to be a very exciting set.
I
I'm
know. I
So
gonna
filled in on that scrim.
yeah, I know
I'm
you
gonna add
did.
in a little bit. Man, I I completely skipped over the name and kind of forgot about it, but I would like to add in. I haven't seen Telly since last season. I really haven't kept up. But if he's made progress, because I've always thought he's a strong player mechanically, I think he just lacked knowing when to push his lead. Because from watching last season, he gained leads against some of the better ADCs in the league last season. He just never really like pushed it. There was times when I watched him play on her, and there or maybe it wasn't on her. I just remember there was somebody whose beads were down, and he didn't take advantage of it when he had ult, and they didn't. And there was just a couple things where like if he reacts to this and knows that they don't have beads, he has the timers down in his head. He knows they don't have an escape. Just a couple of things like that, and I feel like he could truly shine out. And if he's made those changes from last season, I feel like he's going to be a dominant piece for that Charlotte Fury team this season. You know what? On that fact, change it 2-0 Charlotte Fury. I'm going all in.
Wow.
Oh, Skeet is changing it mid.
I'm going all in.
It's
I
your
really
phenoms. How could you go all in?
I I could go all in and lose a best of one. Oh man, is
Oh
that too
boy.
early? Is that too
Oh
early?
boy.
Is that too early? Oh no.
Oh
Oh
boy.
jeez.
Remember, I was the one that predicted that phenoms would have all-in syndrome, that they would be number one the entire season, and have something happen to trip them
Hey,
up at
hey.
the end.
They weren't number one all season. They actually lost to Darmic in week 1, and I remember I gave NMR shit for it. Actually, his name in my Discord is still lost to Darmic. Because he went in saying like, "Oh man, they drafted so bad and all this," and he's like, "I think we're underrated and we're gonna whoop them up week 1," and they
And
lost.
then
And
babies clap their cheeks.
I will never let him live it down that he lost to the team that he was so sure he was gonna beat. And oh man, that's just funny. Oh,
I
that's
mean,
good. I
they
forgot
they
about
were
that.
kind of in the driver's seat, especially when they beat phenoms. So, just
I
saying.
was I was a little tilted that game. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Not to bring up past seasons presence, one might say, but
Great.
um, it yeah. But those are our predictions for sure, and you'll see them posted later, of course, because we do want to get the opinions of those who weren't here. That being Cooter and Joe, who are on our podcast team. And when that does happen, we will for sure give you the posted in the QSL. But this has been the podcast. We do not want to keep you longer here today.
It's already
There
been long
will
enough.
It has been long enough for sure. But again, we will once again give a prize out to those who have made it this far. If you have made it this far, then send me, as in Rectal, on Discord, the message carrot, and you will get another month subscription to the QSL Twitch channel.
Wait, did you say carrot as in like dangling from a hook? Or did you say
Yes.
Karen like someone who's complaining at you for being a totally normal individual?
No, carrot, as in Jeremy is a carrot top, ginger head. Carrot.
Okay.
As in the vegetable.
Got it. Got it. Oh, now you're gonna force me to
As-
come up with some weird saying to put in the description of this one now. Okay.
If
Yeah.
anyone gets that far, yeah, please DM me. But otherwise, yeah, that is the end of the podcast. It's been a fun time indeed. So say your goodbyes, boys. We will end it here.
Have a good night, everyone.
I have a good one for you to make this